Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Founder Talks, both to our audience here at Marsio Saastamoinen stage and our viewers online. We had a record number of sign-ups for this event, 350 to be precise, and only 170 chairs fit. So if you're sitting in this room, you managed to snatch one of the hottest seats on campus. This room is buzzing of energy.
And so are we.
Hi, everyone. I'm Blanka, a Finnish-Hungarian studying bioinformation technology here at Aalto University. I co-lead Wednesday, a community creating a more equal startup ecosystem for women and non-binary people.
And I'm Sebastian. I moved here from Mexico to study a master's in industrial engineering and management at Aalto University. I'm particularly interested in how technology and entrepreneurship can help our society to solve the most complex problems.
Speaking of technology solving complex problems, we're really excited to bring on stage the man at the center of Europe's AI journey. Not only has he founded research labs, worked in academia, he eventually co-founded one of Europe's most influential AI companies.
That company is Silo AI, Europe's largest private AI lab. In 2024, it was acquired by AMD for 665 million euros, making it the largest exit in Europe, AI exit in Europe so far. Besides building companies, our guest has continued to bridge research and entrepreneurship as a professor of practice at Aalto University and as a leading voice in the global AI race.
Please join us in welcoming on stage the mind behind Qutwo, NestAI, and Silo AI, Peter Sarlin. Hi, Peter. We're so sorry to have you at your workplace today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We're in a room full of students, hopeful founders, startup enthusiasts, and even current founders. Not too long ago, you were a student just like us, studying economics in Turku at Åbo Academy. But it seems like you didn't want to stay a student for very long. We found out that you finished your joint bachelor's and master's degree in under 2 years. What's wrong with you?
Well, you could ask the question, what's wrong with me? I think many at the time would have probably not expected that I'm one to graduate early. My previous life had not been all about studies and education. I've focused on other things, including also sports. But then I guess that's called passion and sort of finding what you really love to do. Then obviously the journey has taken me from economics to eventually finding computer science, machine learning, and AI. And then I guess I'm still on that path.
We are really curious to hear what motivated you to finish your degree so fast. Like, what really pushed you to do such a crazy thing?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, I've said that, I've also said about sort of Silo being the largest private AI lab in Europe, that it probably says more about Europe than it says about us. And in the same way, I guess you could also say about graduating early, it might have said more about the degrees rather than me. But, yeah, I mean, I guess I've always been sort of passionate about what I do, and when I find something that I get passionate about, then I put in all the work that needs to be put in to eventually sort of, reach wherever I want to reach, be it in studies to graduate or be it in building a company. I've always also said that the intent wasn't really to graduate fast. I guess sort of I wanted to get on to PhD studies, and sort of that I kind of bundled that path into one track that took me from sort of kicking off in 2007. So it's a few years ago, it's not yesterday. And then eventually graduating with a PhD in 2013. So that took 6 years, and that sort of allowed me to get into academia.
is there something that you feel like you missed out on during your student years?
Well, as I said, I mean, I did the partying before that, so I didn't have to do it anymore during my university studies, and then, but it's true. I mean, I spent probably on sort of other curricular activities. I spent less time during my studies. But I don't look back too much. I mean, I've always focused on the things that I'm most passionate about, and that implies that you rarely need to look back. I really enjoyed the time that I spent at the university and in academia, and I think it's it actually, especially sort of during my PhD studies, it actually was among the most creative periods, in the sense that you didn't have too many distractions. I mean, as a professor, you eventually need to supervise students, which obviously is lovely, but takes time. You need to teach courses and do a number of other sort of activities, as everyone knows. But during your PhD studies, you actually can only focus on doing your PhD, and at least I was in that lucky position. So, I think all of that has been sort of a very creative period of my life.
Okay, we see that passion is a key for you. Peter, we studied your journey as a student, PhD, professor, and founder of groundbreaking companies. Something that stands out for us is that you seem to be a person who takes brave career jumps. We also have a theory that you can see the future, and we hope that we can prove that today. All of the brave career jumps happen exactly at the right time, and that's a bit suspicious. So for the next 35 minutes, we will be following your journey from the beginning and try to understand what kind of actions made it all possible. We will continue with 15-minute questions from the audience.
I'm really looking forward to that. All right, let's jump into it. Let's start from your student years. As we mentioned, they were short and intense. At that time, what was the vision for your future? Where was 20-year-old Peter's mind at?
Yeah, I mean, as said, I started off with sort of human and behavioral sciences before eventually then moving on to first mathematics and then computer science and machine learning. I guess I at the time I was probably interested in understanding the world and how the world works, and I probably have a bit of a different perspective to many sort of say pure play computer scientists that are focused on the next neural network architecture, in the sense that I've always also had this sort of economics lens to the world, and an interest in understanding human behavior, which economics eventually is really about. Then actually when I had graduated and my professor at the time moved to Stockholm and took me with him to do a PhD at Stockholm University. I was still doing the first year in economics. That was also the time when I concluded that I don't believe in the economics toolbox in understanding the world. Spending time in Hilbert space trying to understand individual human behavior. And that was during the global financial crisis, when I think quite many sort of had a little bit of a lack of belief in the economics toolbox, and then took the step to computer science and machine learning, and eventually did a PhD then on actually topics related to economics, so modeling financial stability and building some of the first machine learning based models for that specific purpose.
Okay. In the early 2010s, you started your PhD in computer science, but that's also not really common, especially you were 23. Also, switching fields at that level is not common. We also want to know, how did you catch up with others who spent both bachelor and master in that field?
Yeah, I think I would actually say that the probably the most, at the time, many thought that that was the sort of most stupid decision you could do when you pick an academic career at the intersection of two domains where really machine learning and neural networks were not appreciated in economics. And it was actually extremely difficult to publish in top-tier journals at the time, probably kind of still, but especially at the time. Machine learning was almost a swear word in the field. And but I guess I truly had sort of conviction in that the way to solve some of these most difficult problems is through machine learning. And then I've always been really driven by eventually real-world impact. And I mean, obviously, I'm still sort of a researcher at heart, and I think that still depicts how I operate. But throughout sort of my career, I've wanted to see state-of-the-art and push state-of-the-art machine learning into real-world applications, and that's sort of how I operated already then.
We actually looked at your PhD. Not thoroughly, but a bit. We were impressed. And deep in our research, we actually did many things, such as chat with people that know you, both professionally and personally, and they both called you a visionary. Visionaries, by definition, take wild bets, but your bets seem to pay off every single time. How did you know that a PhD in machine learning would pay off, or was it more of a gamble?
Yeah, I think I'm sort of, as a person, I really trust intuition, and that I guess sort of you need to do when you sort of want to operate at pace. But then I also sort of, I probably have a certain level of analytical thinking combined with that, which implies that these are rarely sort of bets that wouldn't be based upon actually sort of building an understanding of how the world is working today and where I believe the world will be in the future. And so, yeah, I mean, I mostly blush when people say things like that, but I mean, I do think you need, to a certain extent, you need to be able to see behind the corner when you make bets. And
the future, possibly?
The future is behind the corner, right? So, and at the same time, like obviously now in hindsight, it's easy to say, but at the same time, it was quite an obvious bet that machine learning and AI will be at the center of it all in the future. Then you can take many different paths to that, and I was obviously not the only one betting on machine learning in 2010. So in that sense, I've done things a little bit differently, but many others have also made the decision that machine learning will be the future.
During your PhD, you were really busy studying, working, traveling around the world to different universities, and hopefully sleeping. Your research focused on complex economic systems and building computational tools to analyze them. At what point did you start feeling that understanding these systems and publishing papers just wasn't enough for you, that you want actually build something out of it?
I don't think there was a moment like that. I think that's how I've operated throughout my life, since being like a small child, trying to make a business out of many small hobbies along the way. Let's not go into that, but I mean, I think that's been how I've operated always, with a certain level of entrepreneurial mindset in whatever I do, and I think that's something that everyone can eventually build into your habits, how you operate, and I actually think that in many cases successful professors are also entrepreneurs at heart and operate like an entrepreneur. You need to recruit your research group. You need to do good research. You need to do some sales and marketing of that, and then you need to get more funding, and then you iterate that loop, and so it's like building a business in that sense, and that's how I guess I also operated in research. And then, as I said earlier, I mean, I really wanted to see real world impact of what we do in the academic work that we did, and you referred to some of that being like modeling of complex systems, but at the same time, I mean, it was a very practical problem. It was in 2008, 2009, the beginning of the global financial crisis. And I think everyone at the time was thinking of, how could we actually make an impact? How could we contribute to what is happening in the world today?
I see. In 2011, you founded your first company, Infolitica Ventures, which was a consultancy and a startup builder focusing on AI applications, a niche that wasn't much explored that time. Was this the first seed for Silo AI?
Yeah, you've really done your research. No, so
Really?
yeah. 2011 is true, and Infolitica was a company that we built, or I founded, and we were about 5 people or so that were basically taking some of the research that we were doing into the real world. So basically, yes, we were working with the European Central Bank, we were working with IMF, we were working with multiple central banks across the world to eventually be able to sort of take into practice what we were doing in research. And yes, I mean, that eventually ended up being the vehicle out of which we did a spin out when we founded Silo AI. So the original sort of AI platform and team came out of Infolitica, and today Infolitica has been rebranded. It's the same legal entity still, but has been rebranded into Postscriptum. And Postscriptum is also the company that basically has now incubated Qutwo and NestAI.
Lots of things going on there. You also already ran a lab before Silo too, Risk Lab, associated with Aalto University and Hanken School of Economics. You were as prepared as you could have been for starting Silo in 2017, but it meant taking a step back from academia. Another leap you're taking. Now you've seen the academic world and the startup world. Academia is quite hierarchical and structured. Startups are the extreme opposite of that. What was something relevant you had to learn to succeed outside of the academic bubble?
I mean, I had to learn everything. I knew nothing. When we founded Silo AI, I still was sort of first and foremost a researcher. As I said, I mean, I've had this, I guess, entrepreneurial mindset to the way I operate, but I mean, the reality is that when you start your first company and scale your first company, you know nothing. I didn't, and the people in this room that are setting up their own company, probably neither. You might know even more. I had focused mostly on academic research, and so I had to learn it all. And obviously, I was lucky to be able to work with brilliant people that had more experience from various fields, from larger corporates, from entrepreneurial journeys, and from also longer experience from academia at the time. As you said, I was fairly young, and I really think that the one thing that helped me at the time was curiosity and willingness to admit that I actually don't know, sort of humility, and then willingness to put in the work that allows you to learn what you need to learn along the way. And I don't kind of think that much has changed. I mean, I still have, when we're building again, we still have plenty to learn.
And you keep building with your team, or you were building with a team. And a team is a very vital part of starting up, but so are customers. In many ways, they're even more important. In a Slush interview, you mentioned that in 2017, when you founded Silo AI, you and your co-founders weren't quite sure how to approach the market at first. It must not have been easy finding your first customers. Walk us through those early days What was it like trying to find a company ready to work with machine learning models?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack in that. So, now it's obvious to work in AI, to set up an AI company, to sell AI, to convince an enterprise to adopt AI. In 2017, much less so. Or let me put it this way. It was actually an AI wave, so everyone was interested in AI, but the technology didn't have the same maturity level. Market didn't have the maturity level. Enterprises didn't have the maturity level. It was actually very easy to sort of approach customers because everyone was interested. It was sort of much more difficult to actually create sort of sustainable value and build long-term customer relationships. A fun fact is that Silo, being founded 2017, is actually one of the few AI companies that still sort of operates. Most went out of business since that. OpenAI was founded in 2015 or so. And then there are a few, but most AI companies founded at the time didn't really find product market fit. And what we basically, I mean, it took us a year, more than a year, to sort of actually find a direction. We did not have a direction before that. We did not know what we were doing. Eventually, we were bootstrapping at the time, so we were basically revenue funded, but there was not much revenue, which implied that we were in trouble. And we had to find the pockets in the market where we can create most value. And that sort of, I think, was for our benefit. So we did not have the capital that we could have had if we would have raised a lot, which implied that we had to narrow down and double down on the specific parts of the market where we could create most value. And then eventually, obviously, in hindsight now, it's easy to look back and say that it sort of we grew exponentially and everything was easy, but it was actually extremely difficult to find the first customers where you could sort of somehow define that you have a product market fit and that you're creating sustainable value and that you can grow those customers.
You had a large co-founding team and amazing advisors too. Who did you rely on in moments of hardship?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we had a good, as I said earlier, I was in a good position in the sense that we had co-founders with very different backgrounds. As said, I mean, I had very little background in building a business, and we had people with various backgrounds in the founding team. And I wouldn't say that there was sort of one individual. I would say that it was actually the mixture of. But mentioning a few in the co-founding team, I think Tero Ojanperä was crucial, and he was eventually throughout most of the journey. He was the chairman, with whom I operated very very closely, obviously, as normally the CEO does, in the same way, Johan Kronberg, who is former PwC CEO and chairman, and brought his sort of expertise and experience. And then Juha Hulkko, who is the founder of a few companies and has a long entrepreneurial journey. And I would actually say that without ranking the people that advised, because many were very supportive, I would actually say that they brought the different capabilities, but especially sort of valuable for an entrepreneur oftentimes is someone who has done the journey before, someone who has basically been in the same situation, seen sort of a small, tiny company grow, and be in the position as a CEO where you need to basically, you need to do a different job every year because you might be running a company that is double the size, 3 times the size compared to the previous year. And that's where especially Juha's experience was extremely valuable.
A moment ago, you briefly touched on fundraising with Silo. I must ask, related to that, what was it that prompted you to start fundraising?
We didn't.
You didn't?
And I might be a little bit different in the sense that I don't think the fundraising is not meaningful in itself and on its own. It's eventually it should serve a purpose. It should serve a purpose to scale something that you know how to scale. And in many cases, I think entrepreneurs tend to fundraise at the too early stage. They just don't know what is actually scalable. And there's a lot of capital available out there. And in many cases, I actually think that it could be even more harmful than beneficial. So, we did not fundraise in the very beginning, just because of, in hindsight, it's easy to say, but just because of that. But I think because of those beliefs. And then, yes, we took in a little bit of capital in 2022. And that was not through a structured fundraising process. But we had obviously sort of been the company sort of, to many it looked like a success. We had more than doubled in size 4 years in a row, grown profitably, so doubled in headcount, doubled in revenue, and so forth. And then eventually when the partner that we eventually ended up choosing showed up, we thought that we look at the world in the same way. We want to sort of build the same outcome together. And then we decided to join forces. It was not sort of the capital we were going for. We were going for the partner, for the journey that, we anyway were on. And in hindsight, again, I think, it was a good decision. It allowed us to double down on investing in building our own platform, which today is AMD's Enterprise AI Suite, so the platform that all AMD customers, enterprise customers that run AMD compute run on, and then building models, our own large language models, which again we did on AMD compute. We were the first company to prove throughput scaling on AMD compute. And again, if you could probably then say that it was very decisive in the next step that we took in joining AMD as their global AI lab.
So in the early 2020s, Silo AI growth skyrocketed. This was the first time you were in a high growth environment where decisions have to be made fast. There are all kinds of pivots. The scale is bigger, and the future vision needs to be crystal clear. When the stakes are high, how is it being the one carrying on the decision-making power?
I think if you, when the stakes, there's obviously always pressure on the CEO, on the founder, on the owner, but if you are in that position and you are alone, then I think it's not an optimal position to be in. So I was happy to be in the position where, obviously I had the ultimate responsibility, but I had built a team around me. I had a great board. I had a great group of key owners, and then I had a great leadership team, and these are just the different stakeholders that you operate with that should support you on that journey in different roles, and I think that's also where I actually think that especially the people with whom we founded Silo AI contributed significantly in ensuring that we put the right governance in place from the very beginning, where you actually have a key owner group with whom you align the sort of high-level ownership strategy of the company. You have a board that takes the role of a board in this governance structure, and then ultimately, obviously, I had built out a leadership team with whom you share that responsibility, and that eventually, I guess, is the reason why I never really felt alone in that position.
There seems to have been a lot of talent around you, and you've also gotten to experience very different phases of building now. Many founders say that they prefer a certain stage of building over the other. Not everyone can be a good CEO when starting up or during the growth years and even after. What would you say, which stage are you most talented at?
I mean, I think I'd like to think that I certainly have some skills with more talent and others with less. But I guess an entrepreneur always needs to really be able to adapt to the situation. And I guess I've always you've referred to these sort of transitions. I guess I've had to adapt to different situations. I guess I've always, all the way from being this small child, I had to adapt to different situations, and that's something I think you can learn. And then obviously, sort of, an entrepreneur comes oftentimes with different traits and skills that can be still beneficial at different stages. So I certainly very much enjoy the beginning. I'm very hands-on. I try to at least be. I'm not sure whether I'm useful, but I try to be hands-on in building. And when you're small as a company, then eventually sort of that means that you get to basically be part of the, or you are the recruitment team, or you are the sales team. But then, of course, when you grow as a company, then you probably will, I mean, it doesn't leave you, right? So you will still be involved because you're passionate, because you care. And then you need to find ways to operate with a larger team. You need to find ways to basically scale that capability. But probably, that trait will sit in you. And that's, I think, where you eventually come to these questions, whether you call it micromanagement or whether you call it sort of passion and care, and and then eventually you build ways of working around that actually allows others to operate, even though you are hands-on involved. And that I guess sort of I am still very hands-on, even though the company gets a little bit bigger. And then there are many sort of phases to be done still. So Silo wasn't that big. And I think the question really is sort of how would I operate in a larger environment? AMD was quite a big company. So that obviously sort of is a different environment to operate in.
Throughout your career, you have had the chance to work with different kinds of teams in different fields. Managing people is quite complex for many of us. And it takes a specific type of person to be good at it and also enjoy it. At what point, at some point, you were overseeing 300 silo nodes. What did this teach you about leading high-performance teams?
Yeah, that's an extremely good question, and I think leadership. Leadership is obviously, that's the way you eventually are able to build a larger organization and scale the whatever activity you are working on. But how you eventually scale that is obviously sort of depicted in certain leadership principles and so forth. But ultimately, sort of what I believe we did well at an early stage was to sort of build a joint value base and culture that as you referred to silo nodes, that silo nodes depicted as their basically value base and adopted as their value base, and which eventually brought sort of a very different type of scalability. It's not really about how I lead. Obviously, I need to lead according to that value base, and it needs to be aligned with the culture, and you need to have a specific set of leadership principles. But then the question is, how does that scale across the organization? And there, I truly believe that as you are sort of entering your journey on setting up a company, it's never too early to focus on building a joint value base, a value system for the company, and then eventually focus on building culture. Because that's, I think, what I believe really scales your leadership principles.
Tero actually talked to us and shared about those value principles you had set for the whole team. And related to that, there's been a lot of talk about how you really wanted Silo to be this leading place where all of the top talent wants to work at. I've been dying to know what has made it your heart's mission, or what made it your heart's mission for Silo to be that place?
Yeah, when I left academia in 2017, I had a belief that we can have a larger impact if we do this as a commercial activity. Like not much changed in terms of what we did as researchers, and then when we founded Silo, we were on a mission to. We were on a mission to ensure that to build a European AI lab, but really basically ensure that European companies stay competitive when AI is being adopted. Now, obviously, all of us can say that, obviously we need to do that. But in 2017, everyone was not saying that. But those were the exact words that we used, and eventually to prove that you can build world-class AI out of Europe and in Europe. But ultimately behind that was the belief that we need to make Silo into the best workplace for AI scientists, the place where the most sort of talented AI scientists want to work. And that obviously, again, gets back to sort of culture, but it also really ultimately also gets back to being able to work on the most difficult problems, the most challenging AI initiatives across the world, and with the most talented colleagues. And I think that's sort of what eventually just accumulated when we kicked off with a small group of 5 people to 10 to 20, 40, 80, and so forth.
People are one of the most important things when scaling up, but where you scale matters too. In several interviews, you have mentioned that EU's market is fragmented and startups face a lot of difficulties to scale up. Yet Silo managed to grow up across Europe. What did you do differently?
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that Silo obviously was a very specific type of an AI company during a very specific time. And for a very specific market, and then obviously evolved over time. So when we started off as an AI lab, when sort of there were no transformers at the time, the transformer paper had just been published. The transformers being the neural network architecture behind ChatGPT. We obviously had to take a very different route to market. So our sort of initial stages or initial segment that we focused on was self-driving, everything from cars to vessels to forestry machines and mining machines. So companies like BMW, Rolls-Royce, General Motors, Ford, and so forth. And then only through that, we basically moved from one segment to another. And then in 2022, we launched our model serving platform and hosted our own models, which were the most performant models for low resource languages, European languages, and also other open source models. And it was only mostly at that time that we could really see the sort of challenge of a fragmented market. I still truly obviously believe, now we are seeing developments with the 28th regime and this problem being addressed in Europe. But I truly believe that the fragmentation of the market or the lack of a strong single market is one of the key challenges for companies that are scaling. But it's really the scaling stage where it becomes a challenge.
Yeah, and it can be a total challenge, but a challenge that you overstepped. It is said often that startup founders need to commit to their idea for at least 10 years. By 2024, Silo already had 20 million yearly revenue. You had a roughly 350-person headcount, and you were on your way to becoming a very successful AI company. Yet again, you made an unlikely choice. That's how we see it. You sold Silo AI to AMD. When the opportunity to sell came up, how did you go about making that decision?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I mean, we in a sense, in our ownership strategy, we never defined that, we are planning an exit at year 5 or 10 or something else. We were obviously always open to discussions, but then also our sort of our approach was always to ensure that we're self-sufficient, which means that if we believe a certain decision would make sense, we can take it, but we don't have to take it. And so we were not fundraising at the time. We obviously did not have to sell. I think we were a little bit larger in terms of total revenue as a group because we had sort of subsidiaries in many countries and so forth. And approximately that headcount, maybe a little bit less. But yes, I mean, my thinking was, which we shared in the sort of key owner group, was that we can have a larger impact. We obviously had a discussion on that, and there were, to a certain extent, diverging opinions, but where we have eventually converged on the opinion that we can have a larger impact if we join forces. And if we looked at the path that we were on, because we were not really trying to put out the next ChatGPT, we were positioned very differently. And if we would have tried to sort of take that approach since 2017, Silo might not have existed in 2022 anymore. So in that sense, in hindsight, it's easy to say that I believe we took the right decisions. And then where we were in 2024, I believe that we can have a larger impact if we join forces. And obviously it was important to me that we stay headquartered in Europe. We keep our independence as an AI lab. And we continue to develop open source models, and all of that is still happening. So we're headquartered here in Finland. We have offices across Europe. We've only grown in headcount. We are still working on open source models. And I believe as such, now operating as AMD's global AI lab, we basically provide the opportunity to the people that work at Silo, and I talk like I'm still with Silo, the people that work at Silo.
Probably hard to process. Yeah.
The opportunity to work with companies like OpenAI, Meta, and so forth, which you really don't get in the Nordics. And in the same way, it's to build the enterprise platform for AMD. This is what the team is doing today, and hence I believe that the team is contributing even more to the Nordic ecosystem than it was before.
A few weeks ago, you announced that you are no longer leading Silo AI and switched to an advisory role. Recently, you also have announced that your involvement with Qutwo, focusing on quantum technologies, NestAI with defense tech. When these were publicly announced, they broke the internet. Building in stealth mode seems to be a superpower of yours. How do you do your research to find these high growth environments and opportunities?
Yeah. I mean, you could always come up with sort of very visionary approaches of defining how you eventually always come up with the best next idea. I really think that what's always been driving me has been sort of to have an impact in the real world, to do something that is meaningful. These are two very different initiatives that we've, incubated within Postscriptum and then launched after incubating for a bit less than a year or so. NestAI is focusing on defense. I think we can probably all agree that it's important for us to ensure not only Europe's competitiveness and growth, which is important, but also Europe's security. And that's the sort of mission with which we approached, obviously not only defense in general, but really building physical AI for unmanned systems and ultimately for defense. And that, you know, then eventually the way I reverse engineer is that it's meaningful. How do we actually solve this problem? And it's a much longer discussion, but ultimately I think the reality is that the way defense and defense technology is built today is not actually providing AI that works on the battlefield, that works in wartime. And that's where NestAI is taking a different perspective to building sort of open, modular, and eventually adaptive and adaptable systems that are functional in and on a battlefield that is changing at software speed today. And then if I just quickly, before I know you want to move on, but double click on quantum, that's again, and I will not dig into the details again, it's a longer discussion on its own, but it's not a specific bet on a specific technology. The question is, if we think about what's the next AI paradigm, and then look back, what are the decisive factors that have taken us to where we are in AI today? It's compute. It's to CPU and from CPU to GPU, and GPU is us running on graphics cards, which we could not believe 15 years ago would be actually the solution to get us here. Then given the track and trajectory we are on in machine learning, I don't see a different path happening at the moment, which implies eventually that compute is going to be the next paradigm. Thank
you, Peter. That's a very good breakdown. Unfortunately, we are short on time.
We would love to hear more about.
We really would.
But that was our last question. Now it's time for our audience to put you in the hot seat. So please raise your hand if you want to ask a question, and someone will pass you the mic. And also stand up when asking your question.
If you ask about quantum, I can talk about that.
Hi, Peter. Here's a question from me. Here. So my name is Aalto and I study engineering psychology here at Aalto. And now I have a very interesting question for you regarding the development of AI as we see it at the moment. So how do you see the direction of AI development now? So are systems being built to be optimal for humans, like in a humanity first context? Or are we now building like agent first? So will like AI agents be the core users of different AI platforms as of now?
I think the sort of short answer is that if we look into the future, there will be plenty of sort of agent-to-agent interaction, which is changing the world. I mean, literally is today and is going to continue to change the world. So, and I think that will imply that every organization, every human, but every organization needs to operate differently. But then what is the role of the human? There I might diverge in opinion compared to many, where I still believe that we will continue to see a world where humans do meaningful work, because ultimately that's sort of our purpose. And that's how the world has always evolved. I think it will take sort of significant change in how we operate, but humans will play a significant role going forward. So it will not only be agents to agents, it will really be about sort of how agents are amplifying our capabilities. And while sort of it might have detrimental effects on certain jobs as well, yes, I sort of believe in labor markets that are flexible and will adapt. And hence I think ultimately it's really The question is, which are the organizations that are able to adapt fastest and benefit from the technologies that are being built out?
This is a very low-hanging fruit. I study quantum technology here, and I'd like to hear what's your motivation behind building Qutwo. Is it to move into the compute paradigm, or is it to make a transition from AI into quantum platforms?
Thank you. So this is the thing. I don't think AI and quantum are two different things. And this is how we tend to treat this. Like, we have a new technology, and then we think of that as a separate category. Like, AI is the North Star. We're trying to reach that. For 7 decades, we've tried to reach that. We continue to try to reach that for the coming decades, and then change the definition of it and so forth. Compute is one way to get there. So quantum is our way to get to AI. That's where I believe that sort of GPU to QPU is the transition that will allow us to get towards that North Star. And we're seeing that happening. It's not a debate on whether full quantum advantage happens in 3, 5, 10 years. It's happening today with quantum-inspired approaches that's basically just simulating on classical compute. And it's also happening with hybrid approaches. That's in simulation, optimization, and these sort of normal use cases. But where I also believe it will play a key role is machine learning and AI workloads. And we know how much the world has invested in that. And it has a significant impact on how we eventually generate value with AI if we can find sort of more efficient compute solutions. And that's where sort of our conviction is that quantum is sort of on that path.
Thank you for the great talk. I'm Mark. I'm a graduate of economics. I love your background. You mentioned some of the structural difficulties that we have in Europe, but you are a champion of Europe and a champion of the Nordics. So what are those things that you kind of really believe in that we possess here, either in Finland or Nordics or Europe?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I think a trust-based society, also, for the many reasons why we love this country, I also made the decision to. I've lived with the family in many places, and we've moved back every time. It's not enough, though. But this is a country where many people are happy. And have been happy for a few years already. But then I actually really think that I'm concerned, and many are concerned in Europe. I'm concerned in Finland because this is not enough. It's a necessary but not a sufficient condition. And this fragmented market is a challenge. It's not the only challenge, but then ultimately, I think, really the sort of willingness to take risk, willingness to actually raise the bar and be ambitious, go for the moonshots, because we have sort of what it takes. We have the talent. We have some of the most talented researchers in the world in Europe. And at the moment, we seem to be attracting this talent more than and better than ever before. For various reasons. And then, we have access to compute, we have access to data. These are the 3 ingredients you need for AI. Ultimately, I believe, the capital markets are global. So good initiatives will have access to capital as well. There are on all fronts things we can do, but basically we have it all. I really think that we need ambition. And then this sort of macro perspective, really, that I've also said before, is that we need to build strong ecosystems. And Silicon Valley is an ecosystem. Took many decades to build. Around Stanford, companies venture capital, startups, and so forth. And that is happening today. It's happening in Paris, it's happening in London, it's happening in Zurich. And to a certain degree, I think it's happening here in Otaniemi as well. But it doesn't happen on its own and by itself. So, we need to continue to attract world-class researchers and students here, provide them moonshot opportunities where they can land a job and do meaningful work and stay in the region. And eventually, it could be a big tech company. Then they will go on and set up their next startup in the region and so forth.
I have to agree, but I might be biased. I love Aalto and I love Otaniemi. I think there's a lot of cool things going on. So couldn't agree with you more. That's a wrap on our Q&A. Thank you for your contributions. And thank you to the organizing team. Thank you to the audience. And of course, thank you, Peter, for sharing your journey with us.
Now for our audience, don't leave just yet. We have some drinks and snacks for you. And Peter will stay here for another 30 minutes in case you have any more questions.
And of course, we haven't forgotten our online audience. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you again in April for the next Founder Talks, here with Ilkka Paananen from Supercell.